I've been the archer, I've been the prey, by Taylor's Roses. Peter had just gotten stabbed. Not exactly the ideal way to end a day, but he didn't really want to bother Tony or Pepper. If he did, Tony would almost definitely take the suit away again, and bench him from patrol, maybe for weeks. And Peter couldn't let that happen. "You seem to have lost a lot of blood, Peter. Shall I alert Boss?" Karen asked, her voice calm but clearly concerned. Peter's eyes widened instantly. No, don't, Karen," he muttered quickly, trying to sound more okay than he felt. He began peeling off the suit, wincing as the fabric tugged at the wound. There it was, a jagged hole just below his ribs, where the villain had stabbed him. He'd pulled the knife out immediately, which, now that he thought about it, probably wasn't the smartest move. The bleeding hadn't stopped. Blood had soaked through the suit and was now dripping freely onto the pristine white carpet Pepper had gotten him last week. That alone made him feel even worse. As soon as the suit was off, Peter stumbled to the closet, digging out a hidden medkit from behind a false panel. His hands trembled as he opened it, his fingers sticky with blood. He grabbed a needle and thread, bit down on a rolled-up t-shirt and began stitching himself up. The pain was blinding. Every movement sent shocks through his side, but he powered through it, jaws clenched tight. The stitches weren't pretty. In fact, they were uneven and a little shaky, but they held. For now, that was enough. Once done, he reached for a bandage and began wrapping it tightly around his torso, groaning and flinching with every tug. When he finally collapsed onto the bed, he stared at the ceiling, his breath coming in short, shaky gasps. There was a dull pounding in his head and a persistent ache in his side. "Tomorrow is going to suck," he muttered. Then, after glancing at the blood-soaked carpet, he added, "Pepper's gonna kill me." Peter was kind of dizzy, and not in the usual low blood sugar kind of dizzy, but this was the kind of dizzy where the ground seemed to tilt with every step, like the world had lost its balance. They were currently in gym class, running laps around the field, and Peter felt like he might faint at any moment. From the second he'd opened his eyes that morning, he knew something was wrong. His side throbbed with a deep, sharp ache, worse than the night before. He'd had to peel back the bloodied gauze and replace it with fresh bandages, all the while gritting his teeth in silence. He was almost certain Tony and Pepper had picked up on the way he moved, too stiff, too careful, but neither had said anything yet. Still, he couldn't bring himself to tell them. He didn't want the lecture, or worse, he didn't want to lose the suit again. "Hey, Peter, are you okay?" Ned asked, jogging beside him, breath hitching slightly. Peter didn't usually feel winded during gym class. Thanks to his enhanced metabolism, stamina and reflexes, he could normally run laps without breaking a sweat. But not today. Today his legs felt like they were made of lead. Every step jarred his side, sending fresh waves of pain rippling through him. "Yeah, I'm fine, Ned," Peter said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just a little sore after last night's patrol." But even as he spoke, the world around him started to blur. Black spots clouded his vision. His skin went clammy and his whole body felt like it was overheating. A high-pitched ringing built in his ears, muffling the sound of his classmates. "You sure, dude?" Ned asked, slowing to match Peter's fading pace. "You seriously don't look good. You look like you're about to pass out." I'm okay," Peter tried to reassure him, but his voice was faint, barely audible. And then he felt it. A warm, unmistakable trickle ran down his side. He looked down and watched, horrified, as a dark drop of blood fell from beneath his shirt and hit the gym floor. His heart skipped a beat. Oh no. He pressed his arm against his side, feeling the wetness soak through the bandages and then his shirt. The bleeding had started again, worse than before. This was bad, really bad. "Holy crap, dude. Is that blood?" Ned's voice cracked with panic. Peter opened his mouth to respond, but it was too late. The strength drained from his limbs all at once, and before he could even brace himself, his knees buckled. He hit the ground hard, his vision spinning wildly. He wasn't out cold yet, but his body had officially given up on him. Gasps and startled cries rang out as the other students stopped running, several backing away in alarm. Peter blinked up at the sky, its blue colour blurring into white as his eyes lost focus. He could feel the blood now pooling under his arm, warm and sticky against the cold track surface. "Oh my God, he's bleeding out!" someone yelled, their voice distant and distorted. And then, finally, everything went black. Peter slowly peeled his eyes open, blinking against the harsh, sterile light shining directly into his face. It felt like someone had turned on the sun just to blind him. He let out a low groan, his body shifting slightly on the soft hospital bed beneath him. Everything ached. His limbs felt heavy, his side throbbed dully, and his mouth was as dry as sandpaper. As his eyes adjusted, he began to take in his surroundings, the smooth white walls, the quiet beeping of machines, and the faint antiseptic smell that clung to the air. Medbay. Stark Industries medbay. Just perfect. Which meant Tony and Pepper definitely knew. Which meant one thing. He was probably going to be grounded until he was 30. "Hey, kid, you awake?" The voice came from beside him, calm, familiar, and tinged with concern. Peter turned his head slowly, every moment an effort, and blinked a few times to focus. Tony Stark was sitting right there, leaning slightly forward in a chair next to the bed, worry etched across his face. Peter mumbled, his voice hoarse and weak. Tony let out a breath that was half relief, half exasperation. "We almost lost you there for a second, Squirt. You scared the crap out of us." He reached over and ruffled Peter's curls gently, as if needing to reassure himself the kid was really okay. What happened?" Peter muttered, his memory fuzzy and sluggish. "You collapsed in gym class. Blood loss. Ned freaked out, called me, and the rest is history. Happy drove like a maniac getting you here, by the way. Oh, and Pepper's still mad about the bloodstain on the carpet," Tony added, raising a brow. Peter winced, offering a sheepish look. "Whoops." Tony gave him a flat look. "Yeah, whoops. You nearly bled out at school, Peter." He leaned back, crossing his arms, still studying Peter carefully. "You have to tell us when you get hurt. This isn't something you hide. You freaked out your classmates. Even that Mandy, Michelle, whatever her name is, girl, looked like she might cry." Peter blinked in surprise. MJ? She had been worried. That wasn't like her. He honestly hadn't thought she cared that much, but a small part of him felt oddly warm at the thought. "Well, it didn't seem that bad at first," Peter mumbled, picking at the edge of the blanket. "And I didn't want to take the suit away." Tony sighed, clearly trying not to lose his cool. "You're lucky that's all I take away. You're grounded for the next 20 years, minimum." Peter groaned, flopping his head back against the pillow dramatically. "Seriously?" "Yeah, seriously. You don't get to collapse in public and bleed all over school property without consequences." Peter managed a weak smile. "So, do I at least get soup while I'm grounded?" Tony rolled his eyes, but the corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Yeah, kid, you'll get soup. But you're also getting a very long lecture later. Just rest for now." And for the first time that day, Peter felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. After 2 weeks of recovery, Peter finally returned to school, and, to put it simply, it was not a pleasant experience. The moment he stepped through the front doors, it felt like every single pair of eyes was glued to him. Whispers followed him through the hallways like static. A few classmates cautiously approached to ask how he was doing, offering tentative smiles and awkward pats on the shoulder. Others were more direct, bombarding him with questions about how he could possibly be back so soon, after nearly bleeding out in the middle of gym class. Peter, trying not to panic under the pressure, spun a semi-believable story about Mr. Stark arranging advanced treatment for him through private doctors. He claimed they had access to technology most hospitals didn't even know existed. It sounded ridiculous, but somehow it worked. People seemed to accept it without pushing too hard. After all, Stark was known for doing the impossible. Flash, predictably, didn't buy it. He loudly accused Peter of faking the entire incident for attention, claiming the blood was staged and the collapse exaggerated. But, for once, no one really took Flash seriously. Everyone had seen Peter crumple to the ground, bleeding through his shirt, his face ghost white and expressionless. The memory was too vivid to ignore. Some students were more curious than hostile. A few asked Peter how he knew Happy Hogan, Mr. Stark's head of security, after witnessing the man pick him up from school in a sleek black Audi. Peter brushed them off, muttering something about his internship and changing subjects as fast as he could. Eventually, after several uncomfortable days of murmurs, questions and stares during lunch, the attention slowly began to fade. People moved on, or at least they pretended to. Well, until the school field trip when his entire class found out he was Spider-Man. That was even worse than this whole thing. Thanks for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this one shot. Have a lovely rest of your day.